Hello, Mark from Sound Matters here, talking all things vinyl. As always, I've got another phono preamp to review for you today. It's one of the most requested to be reviewed phono preamps. It's the iFi Zen Phono, sat behind me here, and I'm going to compare how it sounds next to the Mani 2, but also a more expensive phono preamp in the Moon 110 LP. This is a highly affordable phono preamp that comes highly rated by many people, but how does it measure up next to both the Mani 2, but also something significantly more expensive? Let's get straight into the review and we'll find out. The iFi Zen Phono lists some impressive specs on their website for a phono stage costing in the sub $200 price bracket. They even make the bold statement that you'll fall in love with your LPs all over again. Now, for a phono stage that's, a modestly priced phono stage, that's a pretty bold statement. So I'm very keen to see if it can live up to that kind of hype. As I say, I'll be drawing comparisons with the Mani 2, which costs $50 less than the Zen Phono, but is another very highly regarded affordable phono preamp. So for just $50 extra, do you get something that's that much better? But also there's a lot of hype and kind of suggestions around the Zen Phono that it can perform at levels similar to much more expensive phono preamps. So I wanted to bring something a little more expensive into the mix through the Moon 110 LP. It's going to be interesting to see how it all compares. Aesthetically, the Zen makes a really great first impression, what with its smart brushed metal front panel and the matte finished top. The distinctive curved shape also sets it apart from the usual very angular boxes that dominate the market. The front panel is sleek and simple with its power button, the subsonic filter switch and clear LEDs showing the selected gain. At the rear, you'll see the usual RCA inputs and outputs, but more crucially, there's also the addition of a balanced output, a feature that's unheard of at this price. Beauty and switches, however, are only skin deep, and beneath the pretty facade are some specifications that iFi are quick to shout loud and proud about. Let's take a jump over to their website to find out the details. The iFi Zen Phono can accommodate a wide range of different phono cartridge options. We've got 4 different gain settings which we control using a small switch on the rear panel to accommodate either moving magnet cartridges, high output moving coil, low output moving coil, and also very low output moving coil cartridges. So from 36 dB to 72 dB, the highest setting, obviously for those very, very low output moving coil options. So this should accommodate the vast majority of phono cartridges out there on the market. You can't change the loading or capacitance settings for any of this. This is all preset, so it will suit people who want to experiment with different cartridges but don't want to mess around with all those complex settings. The Zen Phono also states an impressive noise floor figure of minus 151 dB. Now they claim to have achieved this and gotten away from that notorious hiss that so many phono preamps can have, in part due to their power supply design. Now any phono preamp using a switching power supply will have to employ a certain degree of filtering and design strategies to filter out any unwanted kind of frequencies and noise and interference that can make its way into the audio signal. iFi claim to have developed their own high-tech clean power supply, as they call it, that applies complex filtering but also has a high precision power supply controller, which is crucially located in a part of the PCB board of the phono stage that is orphaned and kept separate from the rest of the circuit so that you don't get noise bleeding into the signal where you don't want it. Now, for a phono stage to be any good at what it does, of course, it has to adhere as closely as possible to the RIAA equalization curve, and they state a pretty impressive figure, at least on face value here, of 0.15 dB, give or take. So this is said to be an impressive figure that's on par with, phono preamps that use hand-selected capacitors. The capacitors in question are the TDK-C0G capacitors, which are run in parallel. So there's multiples of those, and they claim to have this impressive figure. Now, I don't know how they've recorded that figure, whether there's a frequency range in question. I couldn't see anything on the website that gives the specifics of that, but if it's taken on face value, then yes, that's an impressive figure. In fact, I should say that I am fairly impressed about just how transparent they seem to be about the components that they're using. You can go on their website and they list the components, including those capacitors here, in pretty good detail. So there's some information that you can check out in your own time there over at their website. Of course, there will be a link in the description of this video. The last thing to mention before we move on to those all-important listening tests is their pretty unique sounding subsonic filter, which is designed to remove the rumble caused by annoying, pesky, warped records without attenuating the bass. They claim to have based this principle on knowing how records are cut and that, frequencies below a certain point, the vertical modulation of which is bound to be warped. So they've designed a filter that can attenuate this without attenuating the all-important sound of those lovely bass frequencies that we want to keep. So that's what iFi have got to say about the Zen Phono, but what really matters is how it sounds, and most crucially in this review, how it sounds compared to the competition. So let's go over to the deck, do some listening tests to find out how this thing really stacks up. Stats and impressive, figures and marketing tactics aside, that's what we're all here for. We want to hear the best of our music. Let's get to it. My first impressions just listening to the noise floor were actually excellent. I mean, true to their word, the background hiss, if you like, that's so commonly associated with phono preamps was almost non-existent, unless the volume was cranked to absolutely absurd levels. In terms of background hiss, the Zen Phono is easily quieter than both the Mani 2 and even the Moon 110 LP V2, the latter of which obviously costs a whopping $400 more. The only other affordable phono preamp that I've heard with background hiss as low as this is the Classic Audio Spartan 15, coming in at $450 or £330. Listening to James Brown's Soul on Top album, the Zen Phono has a slightly warm, detailed and clean sound. Overall, I would describe the sound as fairly neutral until you get to those higher frequencies where it is a touch warmer than both the Moon 110 LP and the Mani 2. The Zen has a really solid grip on the bass, remaining cool, calm and collected, but also solid and punchy. Instrument separation is great and there's plenty of detail and dynamics akin to much more expensive phono stages. Switching over to compare with the Mani 2, the bass became much bolder but also less clean and defined. To my ears, the top end has a little bit more zest with the Mani 2, but it's also a touch on the harsh side at times, particularly during some of the crescendos in Brown's vocals, but also some of the instrument solos too. The Moon 110 LP V2 is somewhere in the middle, definitely retaining a similar grip on the bass and the instrument separation as the Zen, only with a touch more zing up top. Next on the deck was a recent VMP reissue of LaBelle's Nightbirds. The Moon 110 LP arguably sounds a touch more lively and dynamic, but I'm nonetheless seriously impressed with how the Zen Phono measures up. Swapping back to the Mani 2 just further confirms my suspicions about the bass clarity and the overall harshness. It's a little aggressive for my taste. Sound quality, of course, is very subjective and a very personal decision. The Mani 2 still has great dynamics and detail with a really nice wide soundstage considering the price. But I've always found it doesn't suit my Autophon 2M Blue cartridge. To my ears, the Mani 2 benefits from a slightly warmer sounding cartridge, let's say for example an Audio-Technica VM95E. So far, the Zen Phono is holding up well against a much more expensive phono preamp in the Moon 110 LP, but what happens if we throw a moving coil cartridge into the mix? Running an Autophon Quintet Red, I felt the Moon 110 LP was the better performer here. The sound is less woolly on the low end, with clearer instrument separation in the mid-range and warmer, more natural high frequencies. Granted, I only have one moving coil cartridge to test here, but that's what I'm hearing during these tests. It's worth noting though that the Moon 110 does give you control over the loading via a series of dip switches, while the Zen Phono, as already mentioned, has fixed settings for low output and for very low output moving coils respectively. And now it's time to wrap up. Should you buy the iFi Zen Phono? Considering the very reasonable price, the iFi Zen comfortably punches well above its weight, particularly when it comes to the impressive signal to noise ratio. The Zen comfortably beats anything I've heard to date in the sub $200 price bracket. The performance with moving magnet cartridges easily holds its own against phono stages, costing over twice the price. And the addition of a moving coil upgrade path and a balanced output connector makes this a very easy recommendation as one of the best affordable phono preamps on the market. My only slight niggle is the length of the supplied power cable. It's easily the shortest power lead I've come across from any phono preamp that I've seen to date. And with the height of my turntable unit, I had to use an extension lead to reach a socket. iFi do sell a power supply upgrade called the iPower 2, so perhaps if the cable is longer, this could be the solution, although it does raise the overall cost by a further $69. Besides this, the Zen Phono's name seems reasonably apt, given the hours of time that you could lose getting lost in the music. So that concludes the review. As always, do pop your questions and comments in that comment section as always. And if you'd like to support this channel further, don't forget there's always the usual product links, which are affiliate links in the description of this video. Plus there are discounts from my partners and sponsors, so you can get money off vinyl gear to feed your vinyl hobby. No extra cost to you and goes to support this channel to produce more content. I greatly appreciate your support. There are record cleaning products from Groove Washer. There is record display systems from 12-inch. We've got vinyl sleeves from Vinyl Storage Solutions. We've got vintage vinyl from Vinyl Pursuit. You can get as well a superb sound deck Platamat, which I highly recommend. Check all of those products down in the description of this video below. As I say, it doesn't cost you a penny extra and it does help to support this channel. Thank you ever so much. If you are new to this channel, please do consider subscribing. I'd love to have you on board my vinyl journey, but until that next video, keep spinning and enjoy the music.